So, earlier this week, McLaren teased a new car on their social media outlets. They didn't give us much, but between the picture and the word to the grapevine, most people came to the conclusion that it was going to be the successor to the fan-favorite 720S. So, when they revealed the car, the horsepower specs, and the design, everyone...
That's it?
Well, I think I can safely say that most of us were thoroughly disappointed. The thing that's even worse is recently, it shouldn't be a surprise, as a lot of their cars are essentially just copy-paste cars with a redesigned exterior. So, let's get into it and figure out what the hell is up not only with the new 750S, but McLaren as a whole. So this video was a tough one for me. A lot of people, myself included, really love McLaren, and rightfully so. They gave us a ton of really amazing cars like the F1, the P1, and the MP412C, among others. But the lineup nowadays, well, I mean, it's difficult because on the one hand, some of these cars like the 720S and the 600 LT, I would love to own if I'm ever fortunate enough one day. But on the other hand, they're all the same car, and it gets even worse, as the special edition vehicles like the Senna and the Speedtail use so much of the same components of even the 570S. I mean, you have the 570S, the entry-level supercar, which shares a basic platform and 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8 engine with the next car up, the 650S, which is the mid-level supercar, meant to compete with the likes of the Huracan and the F8. And then the next car up is the 720S. It uses a stroked-out version of the same twin-turbo V8, poured out an extra 200 cc's to get a 4-liter twin-turbo V8. And each of these cars literally have a million special edition cars like the GTs, the MSO variants, and more. That's not even including the most widely sought after special edition cars called the LTs, which stands for long tail. What does a long tail do?
Good question.
Well, you get a little extra horsepower, a slightly longer car, and redesigned rear exhaust.
Wow.
Which is cool, except these things cost so much more than their standard variant cousins. I want to do a quick dive on the mid-level car first, the 650S, as this is probably tied with the 720S as being the worst offender. This is tied with the SLR McLaren as being one of my least favorite supercars ever made. Mine and a lot of other people's biggest issues with it is that, well, it's literally just an MP412C, and they haven't even tried to hide it. It has a nearly copy-paste exterior styling and a copy-paste interior down to the gauges, which I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with, as supercar makers tend to make less cars and have less funds on hand. So a lot of times they have to get creative with how they make their cars. That would be if the car wasn't being sold today, more than a decade after the MP412C made its debut, and if they weren't selling it for more than $250,000. Real helpful hint to the one person watching this that is considering buying a $250,000 650S, I'm gonna help you out. The MP412C, its older brother, right now you can buy them for a little over 100 grand. So save the 150 and buy something else instead. That doesn't even include special editions like the previously mentioned 675 LT, which retailed for around 100 grand more than the base 650. And now, even the most valuable ones don't even come close to what the owners paid for. But now, what you guys really came here for, the clusterfuck, that is the 720S platform, which has spawned this new Walmart-looking 750S. More on that in a bit though. First off, let's look over the 720S. See, the 720S itself borrows a lot of platform, engine, transmission, and more components from its younger siblings in the 570 and the 650, which, like I said before, would be fine if that was it. However, this is essentially the breeding ground for McLaren's not-so-special special edition vehicles. I mean, just a quick look, and there's the 765 LT, both the Coupe and the Spider, the MSO Apex Collection, the Le Mans Special Edition, which is dumb because McLaren hasn't even raced at Le Mans since the F1 GTR, and now the 750S. Except I lied just there because it's not over, because we still have the Elva, the Senna, and all of the Senna subspecies like the GTR, the LM, and the Sabre, and we still aren't done yet because there's still the Speedtail as well. All of these cars use the exact same engine as the 720S.
Same, but different. But still same.
Albeit it's tuned up a little bit, and are all built on the same platform as the 720S. At its peak, the amount of special edition cars built just on the 720S platform for one model year was more than 10. That would be the equivalent of if Lamborghini used that Audi V8 from their Urus and put it in their Aventador. And in one model year, it came out with the Aventador, the Reventon, the Centenario, the Scion, the J, the S, the SV, the SVJ, and more. Okay, now let's finally do a deep dive on that 750S, as that's what most of you probably came here for. The latest and newest car from McLaren. This car was literally just announced, and it's supposed to be the final swan song for standalone, non-hybrid ICE production vehicle. And to be fair, from a purely statistic standpoint, this is a really good performing car. It gets a power boost over the outgoing 720S up to 740 horsepower. Not a whole lot, but it's something. The transmission has been slightly re-geared to help with acceleration in the lower gears, which helps improve the 0 to 60 time down to 2.7 seconds, which is pretty impressive considering this is a rear-wheel drive car. It also gets an entirely reworked hydraulic shock suspension and damper system, meaning it can transfer the momentum and weight of the vehicle to each corner of the car, so it can help you get through a corner even faster. The front has been widened by a whole quarter of an inch as well for improved handling. No word yet on the top speed, although I can imagine it's probably going to hover right around the 212-mile-an-hour mark of its 720 ancestor. Overall, 30% of the car's components are brand new and totally bespoke, and other parts like the brakes are borrowed from the higher tier cars like the Senna. Even after stuffing all of that stuff in, McLaren has still somehow found a way to shed 66 pounds, which is very impressive. It's not done yet though, as the interior has been allegedly redesigned, and while at first glance it may not look like a whole lot has been changed, the car has gotten stuff like USB-C charge ports, and also, it's a little late to the party, but it finally has Apple CarPlay as well. All of this makes it sound like it should be a pretty good car, until you look at it from the outside. First off, the changes between the 720 and this are, well, nearly unnoticeable. Its exterior styling has essentially been copy-pasted from the 720S. Second, and the thing that stood out to me the first time I saw the car, was the color-matched headlights. I'm not an automotive designer, so I can't really tell people how to make a car look better, but what I do know is that those headlights, whatever they're doing, it's not it. This is kind of impressive though, as McLaren has somehow found a way to update their car and make it look even worse than the previous generation. On top of that, they say they've updated the interior, but have they? I mean, look at the 750 compared to the 720. It's another example of copy-pasting. I know they added Apple CarPlay, but are we really going to applaud that? Even the most basic econo boxes come standard now, at least with wired CarPlay. You would think a car that costs as much as a house would come with its standard as well. I know. It's not supposed to be an entirely new car, just a facelift, special version of the 720. But the way they hyped this car up with the teasers and the press releases, you would have thought this was going to be some radically changed 720, turned into some hyper-fast or hyper-track-focused variant. I mean, hell, this thing is a 40 horsepower jump from the 720. You get more than a 60 horsepower jump from the Civic Si to the Type R, and that's been having Apple CarPlay. All of this is to say, none of this comes from a place of hate. The McLaren 600 LT and the MP412C are both cars that are on my list to own one day, and the brand as a whole has been a massive favorite of mine ever since I watched Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso battle it out during the 2007 F1 season. But these cars, in my opinion, are going to give McLaren serious headaches down the road. See, when you release as many special edition vehicles as McLaren has, a rather large problem starts to arise. Your quote-unquote lesser special edition vehicles like the Senna get outshined by vehicles like the Sabre, meaning people who spent $1 million on the Senna, well, they don't even have the craziest car offered by McLaren. Not only that, but the value of the cars start to go down as well, as we've already seen with the 675 LT. Now I know, the car community can agree on very little these days, but one thing we can all agree on is that we all hate people who keep cars cooped up in a garage just so they can flip them one day. However, as unfortunate as it is, those types of people are the backbone of supercar brands like McLaren. So when you have these special edition cars that guys are dropping eye-watering levels of money into, and then like 6 months later McLaren drops another more special edition vehicle, not only do you now not have the coolest car, but your car's value begins to tank, and that's all it's about for these guys, making sure they can flex their fancy car, and more importantly, making sure that when they sell it, they can make a couple extra $100,000. So when McLaren keeps doing this again and again and again, they're essentially telling their old buyers that they don't care about them, and right now, they really can't afford that. During the pandemic, it was no secret that McLaren as a whole was an ass hair away from going belly up, and even on a good year, their racing teams would be lucky if they broke even, let alone turn a profit. And anyone who watches F1 knows that whatever a good year is for McLaren, they're having the exact opposite of that right now. All of this is to say is that don't be surprised if within the next decade or so, McLaren starts to have serious financial issues and bigger issues selling cars in general, especially with competition from Lamborghini and Ferrari only heating up more as time goes on. I really hope that I'm wrong though.